Hey, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, Tammy.
We've got lots going on tonight, so
There's lots going on everywhere.
that's true.
We have a lot of folks in treatment, and so it's been really busy, and I'm
Yes.
seeing a lot of folks. And I have to tell you, one of the gifts for me of doing treatment for the first time in a while is I just am reminded, what I'm reminded of the most is, before we take questions, seeing people who are in for the first time or have not really, I guess, I know that a lot of wives wouldn't feel this way, but I see so many lost little boys. It's like, they didn't mean to hurt anybody. They really didn't. And all the excuses in the world don't count a hill of beans for somebody else's feelings, but they just come in so lost, I think. Like, how did my life get to be here? How did I become this person, And almost 201. And that's a good place to start. So I'm both humbled and moved by seeing people lately in treatment. It's been good.
Well, and you had a busy week last week because you were out on the road doing presentations for
Uh,
professionals, which is always, I think, a gift that you are able to give, that you're sharing your information with professionals so that they can help carry it to clients as well.
Well, I'll say this, Tammy. The thing I'm most excited about is that for the first time in my life, I'm getting called to speak about things that have nothing to do with sex or addiction. They're asking me about families, and they're asking me to speak about codependence. And that's very, I go to a conference, honestly, Tammy, I'm like, they don't want me to talk about sex addiction? Like, aren't I the sex addict? Isn't that why I'm here? No, we don't want to hear about sex. Wow. So actually, that's really, really gratifying. But yeah, for those of you who are going to be, there's a huge symposium over the summer on addiction called the Cape Cod Symposium, and our whole team will be there in Cape Cod over the summer in just about a month. So I guess it's still summer, but
Well, actually, you'll be on the road quite a bit. I've been looking at the calendar. So, so
yeah.
if you're a professional joining us, we post it on LinkedIn, we post it on Facebook. It's on lots of different things. It's on our website.
But
So,
look at it this way, Tammy. Being here on the other side of the moon, I
yeah.
never leave. So anyway, hey folks, we are here
Oh,
to answer questions about sex, love, and addiction. As Tammy said, I've been doing this work as a therapist and a professional for about a quarter of a century. I've written 7 or 8 books in the arena of intimacy disorders, everything from people who have too much sex and terrible relationships to people who avoid sex and stop having relationships, because it's all one big continuum of a struggle for intimacy. Um, by the way, I will say this, Tammy, before we start, I'm always surprised when I talk to a client and it's people apologize for being needful. They apologize for being lonely, like, oh, I know I should be able to handle it on my own, or I know I should be able to, I think it's perfectly fine to want to find love, to be looking for love, to be hoping for love, and to want a partner. And I think that that's never a bad thing. Maybe the ways we go about doing it aren't so healthy, but I do think that when we feel lonely, it's often for a reason. And I just encourage everybody listening to be a little bit more gentle. We need each other. We need people. We need support. I use the word dependency a lot in my work. And, when I was younger, I think the word dependency was a bad word. It was like you're supposed to be independent. You're supposed to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and figure it out on your own. And I think what we're really learning in mental health today is that's not really an ideal. The ideal is to be able to both use your strengths and lean into other people. And so that's the work that I'm really thrilled to be bringing to folks these days. Anyway, why don't we take some questions and see what we can help with?
well put. I wanted to, very well put. Okay, so the first question, I just found out about my husband's sex addiction and infidelity about a month ago. He's in therapy with a CSAT therapist and is attending group almost every day and has a sponsor he trusts. He seems really willing and determined in his recovery, but I'm bracing myself for the first relapse. He's so determined not to relapse, but I feel certain it will happen. I know this is an impossible question to answer, but is it even remotely possible that he might not relapse? Do some people hit rock bottom, get into recovery, and never relapse?
Wow. Um, well, first of all, did I hear a month?
1 month since I'm assuming I'm going to use pronouns just for
Since
the
this
sake of
person
clarity.
found out.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let me just say to you that I think that you are accurate in predicting that you're going to be on a difficult ride for a while. And actually, to be honest, I think you're at some of the early stages of it from the way you write. You know, you're anticipating a lot of feelings that are coming. You know, and you're kind of pinning that on a disclosure that will be the moment that will sort of tip the edge into being overwhelmed and being in grief. And, you know, I don't know what will tip you to that place, but you can expect to be having a lot more feelings than you're having now, and you're going to be having them for a long time. A spouse who's been betrayed by an intimate other, if you've been together 2 or more years, especially a while, and especially if you live together and share a family, it's going to take a year or more before you're going to feel okay again. And you're just on the beginning of what we call the roller coaster. And some days you're going to love him, and some days you're going to hate him. Some days you're going to think, what was I thinking to ever choose this person? And then you're going to be thinking, thank goodness I chose someone who's working on themselves. And then you're going to love the therapist. You're going to hate the therapist. I'm sorry to say that you're going to go a little crazy now. And it's going to feel crazy. And that's so normal for what spouses go through, because, you know, you have to understand dependency is healthy, and healthy people depend on the people they love deeply. And when someone you love deeply violates your trust, it's going to screw you up for a long time. And, you know, you're going to question yourself, you're going to question them, you're going to question everything you've ever shared. So, you know, I would say go ahead and anticipate whatever it is you're concerned about, the slip, the disclosure. But I think what is worth saying to you is that you're already in grief. And if you look at all the stages of grief, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, you can watch yourself, remorse. You're going to see yourself go in and out of all of those. And the best thing that Tammy and I can offer to you as a spouse is that how important it is for you to spend time with other men or women who are going through what you're going through. There's just nothing more curative, more calming than to realize that other attractive, smart person about your age across the room who you like also got cheated on, or in an online room. And it's like, wow, if that happened to them, then maybe it isn't, I'm not such a, because no matter how much you know this happens to everybody else, it's still so personal. You're going to end up feeling like, what did I do wrong, or all of that. So, Tammy, since you happen to be here, would you be willing to tell this person who is a newcomer, really, how they can get support free, no charge, with therapists who will monitor and support?
Yes, and I'm going to put a link in the chat too.
Explain while you're typing.
I will. So to everybody. So on this site, sexandrelationshiphealing.com, there are a number of opportunities like this one, but also drop-in groups. So the drop-in groups are like Dr. Rob just said, if you identify as a betrayed partner, if you identify as a female sex and love addict, if you identify as a male, sex and love addict, if you identify as a male partner, we've got it all categorized. Yeah. Where other people like you with as he said, monitored situation, so that it's a safe environment for you to share and get support and give support to others.
And we don't record those sessions. Those
Correct.
sessions are simply for you to drop into. We offer this as free support. This comes from our belief that that these are difficult subjects to get good information about. It's hard, who wants to walk into a room where you don't know anybody? And we are offering you the space to be with other people who are struggling with similar issues. And we have professionals who are volunteering their time to make sure that those spaces are safe. So, nobody says anything uncomfortable or shows anything uncomfortable. And in those rooms, you're going to meet friends, you're going to get support, you're going to hear about a book you can read or a place you can go, and those folks will be far better, equally as good guides for your healing as we will. And that's why we set all this up. And this room is one example of that. So thanks, Tammy, for putting that out there.
Well, and the podcast, we were talking about that just a bit ago, but Dr. Rob has recorded at least 60 podcasts. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? He hosts them. And then he has guests on that answer questions, talk about different topics. So there's a ton of really good resources, because there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. But we wanted to have a space where you can find good information by people who actually know their stuff that will be helpful for you. So keep coming back. I'm glad you're here.
I just threw the name of the podcast in the chat because we are a top 20, well, we're a top 10 healthcare podcast in America, and we're a top 200 podcast. And it's not me, it's really the amazing people who've been willing to, again, give their time to talk about infidelity and relationships and divorce and separation and healing and hope and just all the stuff that my therapy friends write books about. They come online and they talk about it. So if you're listening to Sex, Love, and Addiction, again, it's free. But what happens there is you might find yourself really upset and you might get some comfort there, or you might find yourself wanting to act out and you might get some distraction there. People use it for lots of purposes. Anyway,
and you can link to it from the website link that I posted as well. You can find all the different platforms. It's on Android, iTunes, Spotify,
and
Stitcher. Yes, all of them. So yeah.
We got a bunch of questions down there, Tam.
I know, we got to keep moving. Okay, so I have ADHD and currently taking medication for it. Also, I am a partner of a porn addict, and after listening to the podcast on ADHD, I have some questions. What is the difference between ADHD and a broken reward center because of addiction as far as motivation versus procrastination, meeting needs, lack of follow-through, non-existent organizational skills, etc.?
Well, I can't really give you a scientific definition for that, but I can tell you a little bit. I mean, ADD is a biologically, naturally occurring brain disorder that is probably genetic and is passed on through families. It usually involves in adults a problem with inattention, where you are looking at something or focusing on something, and then maybe another thought occurs to you, and then you just go there. Or maybe you're doing the dishes and you think about something on the computer. The next thing you know, the dishes are in the sink and you're on the computer and the dishes are still sitting in the sink, which is one of my complaints in my marriage. The idea is it really is a neurobiological problem, and medication, for some people, medication can be helpful. Stimulants are actually used in people who have ADD. Things that make other people really stimulated actually calm them down and help them to focus more. So ADD is a lifelong, adult attention deficit disorder is a lifelong issue, often shows up in childhood. Hyperactivity, which is ADHD, is usually what you see in childhood. You see kids who are hyperactive and kids who are just hyperthinking. By adult life, most of us drop the hyperactivity, but we still continue to have the distractibility. We do have a certain percentage, I think about 18 or 20%, people with ADD who have sex addiction or a lot of impulsive, just decided to go do that and went off and did that, but sexual behavior. But when you talk about using your reward system and putting it into overdrive with drugs or behavior, and the recovery from that, I don't think that's really the same thing. I do agree that addiction is being hyper-focused through fantasy and behavior on a particular thing until you get to it and have it, and then you kind of back off until you get back to it the next time. But I don't think that ADD is fully a problem with the brain's reward system. Addiction is a problem with the reward system. ADD is more a problem of attention and focus. Although if you have a problem with attention and focus and you need a lot of stimulation, some people who have ADD will be engaged in, let's say, looking at a lot of porn or doing a lot of gambling because it meets that need for intense stimulation they have. But even those folks, they're not addicted. They're actually tuned into those things to kind of focus. It's just a different animal. I can't, Tammy and May, you know some things about addiction and ADD. How would you say they're different?
Well, I thought that was really, helpful to understand. I actually really appreciated your explanation of that. But I recognize both aspects for my own personal life. I can be doing, right? Yeah, they are different. And like you said, one is very, it's attention. It's like, and it feels more just kind of scattered, where the compulsive stuff felt deep rooted, like, Driven. Yes, yeah. Where the other is just, next pretty thing, right. This was like so compelling, so it even in my own life, I would say it felt, feels different. So,
Tammy, thank you. That was a brilliant explanation of that. I thought really that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, I'm a partner of a sex addict on day 28 post discovery day, and I just found out about some more infidelities. Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel like I've been hit with a train all over again. Does it ever stop hurting so bad? Also, how long should I have to wait for a full disclosure? The trickle of finding new information every couple of weeks is killing me. Mm.
Well, actually, I've done some writing about betrayed partners, quite a bit actually, and in some of that writing, I worked with a woman by the name of Jennifer Schneider, and Dr. Schneider did some research on what staggered disclosures or getting information in a staggered way does to spouses. And the problem with it is, I think, and this is for everyone, if you first hear that someone has hurt you or let you down or something bad happened, of course you want to know every detail about it. And I think it's natural. You kind of want to, it's almost like, you bruise yourself and you want to see how bad it is. It's like seeing how bad is this problem and can I handle it and what do I need for it? You're assessing it. The thing is that the person at the other end, the addict, is trying to tell you as little as possible because they're trying to not get in more trouble, and or they're trying to keep doing what they want to keep doing and keep lying to you in the beginning. And so you get a little bit of information, they tell you that's everything, and then you think, whew, okay, I mean, that's awful, but I can handle it. Or you think whatever you think and you figure out how to handle it. But then if you 3 weeks later or a month later, and I'm so sorry, like Tammy said, you find out something else, it's like starting all over again, only worse. Because now you don't believe anything they've said and all bets are off. And even the next time they tell you this is everything, well, will it be everything? And so this is one of the reasons why we do therapeutic disclosures in treatment, and where we go through all of the behavior with a spouse and come to some conclusion around the history after working with the person who's been acting out. Because, and I'll just say this to you, I don't think this is, I trust you when you say you're still being lied to, but if I were to do disclosure with a couple that I was working with, I wouldn't do it in the first week of working with them. I wouldn't do it in the first probably 6. And it's not because I want a partner sitting around feeling tortured that they don't get to have this information. It's because the person who's been acting out often doesn't remember half the crap they did. And I have to walk them through being 17 and 21 and 34 and living here and having this kid and until they remember all of their acting out. And then we write it all down. So that can take a while. That's why we don't do it right away. But I would suggest to you that if you're getting dribs and drabs, that you, first of all, please show up for the partners group, because you're not the only partner who's getting pieces and dribs and drabs, and they need to hear your voice. It would be a gift to them. And second of all, if your husband has a therapist, I'd be calling them. Hey, I just found this out and I'm pissed. If you have a couples therapist, this is the time when you guys need to sit down and pull a professional into the picture if you don't have them already.
One of the other things I think is really important, because you asked for timing, and there's no magic number about, you said day 28. Well, it's not at day 132 that you do this. It really is he done doing the behavior? I mean, because otherwise you're going to get another disclosure. So part of it, like Dr. Rob said, is like pulling out all the history stuff, but you also want some degree of recovery, so that he's got a foundation of that. Otherwise, like I said, it's like, well, he went and did it again yesterday, so now he's got to disclose it again. So it's constantly on that merry-go-round. But go ahead.
She said one more thing that I wanted.
Sure.
She said, does it ever stop hurting so bad? And I hope you heard what I said later. It's a roller coaster. The best thing that you can do to make sure that it hurts less, or that you can tolerate the hurting more, is to get support for yourself. He may tell you the truth, he may not. He may lie, he may act out, who knows what he's going to do. But do you have a couple of good girlfriends, or your sister, or a couple of women, or some of these women who drop in the groups who can hear your pain and validate and support you in a way that he can't? Because he doesn't even know half the shit he's done, and certainly doesn't know how it's really affecting you, or wouldn't be lying to you still. It sounds like he needs a real wallop in the face with what he's been doing, and I have a feeling your response is going to help give him that. So, and by the way, I want to say to every spouse in the room, and this is important, I don't know where somewhere in our weird, warped world, any partner of an addict, I don't understand how you guys ever get the idea that somehow you can make us act out. But I hear you spouses say things like, well, I don't want to get too angry at him, or I don't want to nag too much, or because he might, or what if you can do whatever you need to do, and I will go for a walk. I will call a friend, or I will go hire a prostitute because it's up to me how I take care of myself. It's not your responsibility on any level to be nice to me, kind to me, sweet to me, or pull punches, because we need to get through this. And if you do that, it's just going to take longer. Now, I don't actually recommend any actual hitting, I want to say. But because just like you, me, the addict, I need to have a lot of support grounded in other people around me. So, because I know that you're not going to cheer for my recovery. I'm doing the basics of just being a good spouse by not cheating. Now, you're not going to cheer for that, but my friends are going to cheer for that. So we each need to get support. One last thing, don't tell your children. Certainly don't tell your children in anger or when you're upset. Don't tell your mother-in-law. Don't tell your husband's boss. I understand that these are desires you have because you're so freaking mad at him, and you're going to prove, and you're going to let everybody know how much he's hurt you. And by the way, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to all the spouses. But what I really want you to hear is that once you do something like that, you can never take it back. And I have talked to adult children who are in their 20s and 30s who said, look, I found out about this, my dad, when I was 16. And it's bugged me. You know, I didn't want to know that my dad had affairs. I didn't want to know that my mom was online with an old boyfriend. You know, that children need to know that we're struggling, that we're hurting as a couple, that we're working our best, and that it's not their fault that we're struggling. But they don't ever.
You're cutting in and out.
Lives. I'm not an adult life. Oh, well, let me get rid of my background.
Sorry.
Because that might be better.
And now you're back on the planet. But yeah, you were saying as adult children, they, you know, even they found out when they were 16, and we don't want to know, you know, they need to know that they were struggling, and then you kind of warped out.
Oh, you just don't want to tell your kids, you know, I have worked with people who were in their 30s and someone told them, you know, your dad was a sex addict or your mom used to be with her old boyfriends. It's just not something a child I have ever seen the benefit from knowing. That you are struggling as a couple, that you're having some issues, that you're working on things, that it's not their fault. Yeah, all of that, great. But you never want to tell someone in anger or something that's going on in your relationship, because if you think about it, you may have to face that person across the Thanksgiving table 10 years from now, and they'll have information you just wish they didn't have. So keep that in mind when you get the support you need.
And I want to share too that I know people have done very public to humiliate the person, and what it ended up doing was ostracizing all of them. Nobody wanted to be around them, and so they lost all the support that they really critically needed. So like Dr. Rob said, I hope both of you are getting professional support and help, you know, in navigating this. If you need resources, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. I wanted a couple of comments. I wanted to, one of the people in attendance said, I'd like to say that the interactive groups, the drop-in groups are amazing. And then somebody else said, this sounds familiar. There are narcissists and sociopathic sex addicts who are very good at lying and attempting to cover up, and it never ends. And then somebody said, I would like to say as a perpetrator, it's never the other person's fault. I do have to say that I lied to myself so much that I really did not see the scope of my addiction and betrayal. And I think that is so true, that, you know, an addict will protect the right to the ability to act out. And so it's lying and compartmentalizing and everything else. So,
and this is why one of the biggest issues we face in treatment is denial, because if you can let yourself do things that you know on some level aren't good for you and still do them, you're able to tolerate it. You're pushing reality out the door.
Yes. So next question. The question about relapse resonates. My essay has been sober 8 months after a decade of acting out with partners and hookup apps. He's doing all right. He's doing all the right things, but relapse makes me fearful.
Okay, so I want to say something about that. And I want to say it to all of you spouses with a caveat. Here's the caveat before I say what I'm going to say. I don't ever give anybody excuse to act out. Whatever I have to say, whether it's useful or not, is never to give someone permission to go act out on their behavior. And again, I don't think I could, because that's up to them. But They can interpret what I say in any way they want. And a newcomer might interpret what I'm about to say as permission. But I'll just tell you, I don't know a sex addict that hasn't had a slip at one point or another. I don't see many people who get perfect recovery and never struggle. This is not AA. This is not something you put down and never pick up again. This is sexuality. It's like someone with an eating disorder. They're going to struggle their whole life, and you're on the ride with them. That doesn't mean they have to act on it. That doesn't mean they ever have to act on it again. But it is not unlikely that at some point something's going to happen. And the reason I tell spouses this is not because I know, not because I want to hurt you or let you down, but because when it happens, you can decide how you want to deal with it based on how you find out. Because if and when it happens, the person who should tell you that they had a slip is your spouse, the person who lives with you. They should say, hey, I need to let you know that 4 days ago, 5 days ago, this happened and I'm working on it. And you're going to be pissed. But the reality is, and hopefully this is what I've experienced with most partners, at least the ones that have done some work on this, is they understand that they don't ever want this to happen again. But what's worse than that is they really don't ever want to be lied to again. They don't ever want to find out about this again. So the worst thing than having it happen again is actually finding out from somebody other than the person who did it. Meaning that I've had spouses say, oh my God, I thought I could never live with it if he looked at porn again. But 3 weeks ago, he came to me and he said he'd been looking at porn and he got lost and lost half a weekend or whatever. And I was really mad. But I realized, wow, like that's the first time he's been honest with me about that. That's the first time he told me about. These are actually really important signs of healing that may be more important than if he or she slips again. I do want to also say the difference between a slip and a relapse. A slip is something that we kind of expect in treatment, that at some point someone might return to previous behavior that they tried to change, and it is a slip because it's like slipping on the floor. They slipped, they got themselves right back up, they told a bunch of people, they let you know there's no, and then they keep marching on. And it's just like they slipped and fell down and got back up, and they get to examine it and grow from it. But a relapse is a slip that I don't tell anybody about. And I keep it as my little secret. And it opens the door to all the behavior that might continue. So a slip, when not busted, can lead to relapse. And relapse is, I'm continually doing it and I've just decided I'm not going to tell anybody. And unfortunately, you know, the opportunity to get well decreases as people don't know about the problem. So that's that.
Okay. Next question.
This is going to be a hard question, Tammy. I just know it is. Oh, I can feel it coming.
Do you have any strategies besides the 2 to 3 second rule to stop objectifying women? This is my worst and most serious issue of concern. Because of this, my wife will not go in public with me and gets anxiety when I just run errands. She maintains it's a choice. I should stop. I am 56, but now, but this started innocently during high school and seems to have started escalating in my mid-30s and is a habit I'm struggling to stop. Additionally, could you explain?
Wait. Let's just answer that part of the question. Because that's like a whole deal.
Yes.
So I really want you to think about, I want everybody to think about the difference between, and I don't know this person's experience, I don't know who this is, but between I'm walking down the street and I notice someone's attractive and then I just keep walking. And I walk down the street and I look a little longer, maybe my head turns, and then I snap back. Those are completely different things. It is really, I would not expect anybody to lose their attraction to other human beings. I would not, you know, if you had an eating disorder, I wouldn't expect you to stop enjoying the smell of cooking food just because you couldn't eat everything in front of you. I think it is important for you to recognize that your wife is hurting and hyper vigilant, very, very aware when you look away from her, as she should be. But I also think you have to acknowledge that you're a human being and you may see someone and say, oh yeah, that's an attractive person. What is really important is what you do with it. You know, you can see it and keep moving, and it may be for a while your wife can't tolerate that. And means you're not going to look at all. And I got news for you. I read your thing, and I got to tell you, I think you can stop. I mean, I have had to consciously say, I'm not going to look at anybody on the street. If I find myself looking up, I'm going to look down. I mostly look at the crack on the sidewalk in front of me, and I've done that for weeks at a time, and you can too. And if you truly, And I want you to check out what it is you're doing with people in your program and in your therapy group, and show them what your wife is experiencing so that they can get a sense of it and she's not alone with it, and talk to her about it more. I don't know what the answers are here. There needs to be something in between. You absolutely respect her, don't want to hurt her anymore, don't want to leave her feeling fearful, and you are human and you may see someone attractive and it really isn't a reflection of her. I guess I want to say this about human sexuality. I did get a PhD in sex, so I can tell you a few things. Men, you know, the guys, the ones, yeah, men, you know what men are. Gay, straight, doesn't matter. We are very highly visually aroused, and it is different than women. When we see, what turns us on most immediately is a visual image. So guess what we like? Porn. Oh, wonder why? Because it's all these images. Men don't really care. And you should know this too, ladies. We don't really care whether the people in the images are nice to each other or love each other. But if they got a nice butt and some good this or that, we're going to watch because it's exciting. So I do want you to understand on some level that men will always objectify the person that they're attracted to. I'm a gay guy. I'm always going to walk by that 28-year-old guy and go, because, you know, it was and it ain't anymore. And I'm a sex addict. And is that okay? Yeah, I think it's okay. Do I walk up to him and say, hey, if are you free later? Do I get somebody else's phone number who's that age? No, I acknowledge, yeah, you know, that was fun, you know. So, but I probably wouldn't do that if I was 3 months sober and my spouse was with me and they were thinking like, I'm sick of him looking at those people. So I do think you have more control over it than you say you do. And I think you can get more feedback about it. And I think you have to take into account your wife's pain. And somewhere in between all of that is some kind of answer that is the right one for you.
I'm going to add, if I'm objectifying people, then for me, humanizing them helps. So if I look at somebody and I'm just looking at their attributes or whatever, reminding myself that they're a human being, they're somebody's daughter. And honestly, for me, even saying a little, I wish them peace and happiness today as the human that they are. I mean, some little something, that is different, but it helps me connect to their humanity.
But not bless that really cute piece of, no,
yes.
Not like that.
No. But okay. to connect to their humanity.
I'm kidding with you, Tab.
I know, but it's a good point because it'd be really easy. So you ready for the next part of the question? Okay. Could you explain eroticized rage and as combined with silent manipulation and boundary invasion and treatment for it? That's a lot of terms.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean. I mean, reading all of that together, I can say that there are people who will not respect others out of anger. So, I mean, I think we've all done this. You have a fight with your spouse and, they say, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And you say, no, I'm going to sit here, whether you like it or not. No, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Well, if you want to leave, then you're going to have to leave. In a way, that's a little bit of manipulation and boundary violation driven by rage. It's kind of passive. It's like, no, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'll do what I want to do. And so, there are all kinds of ways that could play out. Angry partners can use silence, withdrawal, and emotional isolation to get a point across rather than saying what they need. But again, I think these are really difficult questions. Even any one of these could be a whole question. So I'm going to leave this for now.
I think so too, because there's books on those. Okay, I'm feeling so angry and triggered right now. If this is not an appropriate place, I'm sorry, it is. How does this relate to the constellation of addiction, and how do I deal with major trigger and the anger? So there's a little background. Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. For 10 months, I've been working on a course to start a business. I haven't made back even half the price of the course and failed to see any promise. Yet I get extremely angry when someone on Facebook said, I made my money back in the first week. I went for a walk and was thinking about this. I think the reason I feel so angry and jealous is because I feel like everything good in life always is for the other person, never for me. Intellectually, I know I'm relatively blessed, but it doesn't change this overwhelming feeling. This is the way I feel about recovery also. It works for others, but it will never never work for me. I can't do therapy because I have no income for 1 whole year now.
So is it okay if I want to talk about something that is going to surprise you? It has nothing to do with what you just said, but everything. There's a really wonderful 12-step program called Debtors Anonymous. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's for people who ostensibly, or on the surface, it's for people who, you know, spend all the money they have and are constantly in debt, and their addiction is the spending and the anxiety around the money. But underneath that, what Debtors Anonymous is really about is about people who really don't allow themselves to succeed. It's really about people who debt to themselves. They leave themselves constantly feeling like they could be doing more, they could be more successful, they constantly compare themselves to other people and come up less than, especially around money and success. And so I would really suggest that I would take all these things that let me back up. In general, you're talking about a filter over life that says life is hopeless and I will always come out at the short end of the stick, and that's just the way my life is. And, you know, maybe it is. I mean, I don't know. You might be a loser. I don't know. But it seems to me if you're in here, you probably are someone who is doing their best to be a better person, and that's a lot more than most people that I've ever met. So, but what it will take to bring you from surviving to thriving, I don't know. And the thing is, I wouldn't just pin it all on your addiction. I would wonder a lot about how you grew up. You know, I mean, I'm sorry about the lack of therapy here, but people who don't allow themselves to thrive, people who always feel that their things are for someone else, the good stuff is for other people, they often grew up feeling that way for a long time, maybe even from their earliest days. And so the pain of the losses you're experiencing now may actually be mirrored in your past. It might be something to look into. But there is a really, I think, concrete way to work on healing what I hear inside of your story, which is I would go to DA, I would go to some meetings, I would get a sponsor, and I would raise my hand and say, I'm a self-debtor. I have not allowed myself to succeed. I have not allowed myself to be earning. I don't even allow myself the gift of therapy. And by the way, did you know that there are community mental health clinics where you can get therapy for free? And every university has student clinics where there are PhD interns who are pretty darn well trained giving away free therapy. So you can, and by the way, did you know that we have groups online multiple times a week that are free? So I do hear a little bit in your story, a little bit of victim. Like, poor me, it's always going to be this way. Now, I'm not blaming you for that. I've been there. And maybe you're depressed and need to see a doctor about depression. But I will say this, and Tammy can mention that in a minute, but as painful as the feeling of I am a victim and I am powerless over where my life is today is, it's also a dead end. There is nowhere to go from the place of victim, because what you're doing is you're pointing over there. And it's only, even if you acknowledge having been victimized, even that is a step of, okay, now how do I move past that? Because the only way to move in life is to be empowered, and victims are disempowered. So the way your story sounds, not the details, but the overview is like, I'm a victim of this unhappy life and I'm just destined to be miserable. And if that's really where you are going to stay there, because that is not a place from which anyone can grow. So Tammy, do you have some thoughts?
I do. I actually wondered about the depression as well. So that if you've never been checked for clinical depression, I think that might be a worthwhile thing to start. I agree. There's so many free resources. There are a lot of people that just go to 12-step meetings and that works for them. One of the things I thought about was an attitude of gratitude. And when I first got in recovery, I had to write a list every single day of at least 3 things I was grateful for. And I found for myself that I couldn't be if I was feeling grateful, I wasn't feeling, victimized and everything else. And I think the victim, it's always a power down, and it's always, everybody else has, and not me. And so there's so much tied up into it. So I very much never want to be a victim. Sometimes we are, but I want to find ways to move through it, and how can I use this, and how can I use this for the benefit of others as well? So,
someone wrote in, Tammy, they said, I call this a poverty mentality. It's not about what we have, but about how we respond. We can be millionaires or not have a dollar in our bank account, but we're the same. I see it all the time in my job where I can't move beyond what I believe I can do.
And I think that that's true. I mean, you know, there are people in, well, that's a whole other topic. We've got more questions.
Actually, let me say one more thing about that online course.
Yeah.
I would be curious why you took that course and why you chose to do that. I wondered if you were following somebody else's dream or that was yours. Because I have a feeling when you follow your dream, you'll be making more money than the next guy. That's how it goes.
Okay. So the next one, I've been attending the drop-in meeting and a local support and no progress is being made.
I love this one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, no, I want you to start, Tammy.
Okay. So there's a difference between attending and doing the work. So I could sit and warm a chair for years and never make progress. So the progress was made when I actually did the work. If I'm going to 12-step meetings, there's 12 steps. There's people there to help me go through the 12 steps. You know, with the drop-in groups, if they're talking about a topic or they're sharing or whatever, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this information and how am I going to take this and utilize it in my life and move myself forward? How am I going to take the problem that I have, which, you know, is often related to me, and figure out steps to help me look at life differently. A lot of times it's the lens I'm looking through too. If I'm always looking at it as, oh, it's not working, oh, it's not working, you know. And the other thing is, like, I think there can be subtle shifts that we miss, you know, like yesterday feels like today. But you know, if I look at a little while back, then I start seeing a pattern of some growth. But really, I know lots of people that go, oh, I attend meetings all the time and it never worked. Well, that's not where the work is. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I want to, I'll add to that. I wanted to see what the other side was. So it's interesting you moved to the attending part, and I was thinking about the progress. What defines progress? What do you mean by no progress is being made? Do you mean that you haven't been able to get time together where you stop the behavior? If that's what you mean by progress, well, then maybe you need to go to 4 meetings a week instead of 1 because you're not around people often enough to become accountable. Maybe you need to take, I don't know, some responsibility in one of those meetings, like you could become a secretary or bring the coffee, or, you know, there are always roles that people can take, because what Tammy is saying and what I'm saying is I feel like we're parents here, mom and dad, you know, here in the recovery family romper room here, but we really, I hate to say this, you only get back what you put in. And if you sit there and wait for the miracle to happen, it ain't going to show up. But if you start saying to people, you know what, all you need to do is go to that next meeting and raise your hand and say, I'm not sure I'm getting anything out of this, but I thought at least I should raise my hand and say that. At least do something to move yourself forward. But ultimately, what I would say is all the tools are available to you, but what is your level of motivation and willingness to pick them up and do them? Tammy is interested in the writing and the steps. I'm interested in you're building relationships with people who are looking forward to seeing you when you get there and say, hey, how you doing? And then you feel like you belong somewhere. And even that is an accomplishment.
And I think both of those are key. And me working through the steps, I made connections, and I also took away the shame that kept me from making a relationship. So I'm a 12-stepper that saved my fanny. So the first 9 steps are designed to help us work through the trashola that we're carrying along with us.
And your next drop-in meeting, wherever that is, you need to say, I don't know what to do to move forward so that other people can help you. You're asking the right question. Mm-hmm. But I would say if you can ask an environment where you're interacting with people and you can see them and they can give you advice, that's probably a great thing to do.
Yes. Don't give up.
So let me just say, Tammy, before this goes on, because I kind of read. So, you know, I was at a conference the other day. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in conferences and I ask people, and I'm done talking and I say, who has a question? There's inevitably someone, this is not this person, who wants to say something because they want to say something. And it's usually not in agreement with what I was sharing. And that's why it has to be a question, because the other day this guy was saying, well, I think blah, 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 blah. It's so different than what you think. And I said, but do you have a question? And he said, no. And I said, well, that's why I don't. Anyway, so I want to comment on this one because this person says it is not a question. But I don't think that anyone who is writing here has more experience in this than me. No offense, but I'll
100% true.
pull punches on that. I've been a sex addict all of my life, and I've been in recovery for many, many years, with slips and without, and I have been in therapy for almost 30 years. So I know a lot about this crap. I've written books about it. So when you say that there are some sex addicts who will not become better, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I think there are some people who are incapable of healing altogether. It has nothing to do with sex addiction. I think there are people who are incapable of insight, some people who are unempathic. But then why would you want to hang around them? I mean, if my experience is people who are incapable of getting better are generally broken in ways that I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time with them anyway. They're not being accountable in their lives. They're taking advantage of other people, and they don't seem to notice or care. So if I were involved with someone who was not seemingly able to get better, I would question why I was involved with them, because it wouldn't be good for me. But I do believe that, you know, I've been doing treatment long enough to say this, that I've sat in treatment centers where we have somebody for a month or 6 weeks or 2 weeks, and, you know, they're on their like 9th out of 10 days of treatment, whatever it is, and everybody's looking and saying, boy, this person didn't get anywhere. And then all of a sudden they read this note. They hear that, they hear the voice of their partner talking to them in anger. They see some film, something happens, and it all comes together. And I often say in treatment to the other therapists who are looking for everybody to advance and do well every day, that sometimes you just have to wait for the miracle. And sometimes the miracle doesn't happen when you want it to happen, even if you're the person who wants to be getting well and wants that miracle. But you do need to keep hoping for it as long as you are willing to do the work. So the person who is going to rehab, attending meetings, reading books, professing their honesty to you, and is still living their addiction and lying, I would suggest is probably not a good partner for anybody, because they're living a double life just to live a double lie. And why would you want to be involved with that at all? But the person who's doing their best to get better and is in struggle, my heart goes out to them, even though their struggle is painful for me.
So this one is, my wife is a sex porn addict of a couple decades and swears there was never physical actions done in person. I don't believe her. What is the probability of this?
So Tammy, what do you think about that one?
I mean, there's lots of, so there's a whole new generation of addicts. There are porn addicts that are porn addicts, and they've never had sex. They're technically virgins. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't act out physically, but, you know, are addicted to the chase or the whatever. Yeah.
Or gaming. I will say this to you. Look, you know, first of all, as a man, and I assume you're a man, it's a little hard to believe that someone's sexual acting out isn't touching someone, because as a guy, I want to get into it if I'm going to have sex. But there certainly are some men and a lot of women who can skate off the surface of romantic intensity and sexual arousal, you know, in poems, in stories, and communicate. There are people who can live in fantasy in all different kinds of contexts. And I've worked with women and men who've kept multiple relationships, sexual and romantic, going with people they'd never met, but they were doing it online. So, you know, I think it's certainly possible, if not probable, that that's true. But I think it's more, you know, I think your lack of trust is probably deeper than this one question. And I think there's a lot more information that you probably need to gather on what she was doing and what it meant to her and who it was with. And, you know, you deserve a disclosure too, and should probably have a therapeutic disclosure. I would never want to be married to somebody and see them on Facebook and wonder if they're chatting with a friend or are they chatting with somebody they used to, you know, so I would want all that cleared up. So I understand your mistrust. I think some help from a therapist would be useful. And by the way, to anybody here, we get no kickbacks for referring to therapists, but Tammy and I do know a whole lot of people around the country who do this work. So, you know, if you're looking for someone in Omaha or Sheboygan, wherever you might.
Sheboygan.
That's it.
Wisconsin.
Let us know.
Yes, qualified people, because there's a bunch of people out there, but there's qualified. So I'm gonna. This one is. This is kind of a comment. I'm an addict, and thank God I don't have a spouse, but I get sick of hearing about female spouses getting so bent out of shape about the addict husband. Dr. Rob makes it sound like the addict is always the devil and the spouse is always the angel.
And guess what? That's true. Why do I say that? So when two people are equal in a relationship, then they're both angels, they're both devils. They both have good times and bad, but they both basically have the right to be completely equal. There's nobody who's one down in the relationship. Maybe for, you let somebody down, you fix it, you're equal again. But when you cheat on your spouse and you lie about it for a long period of time, you are no longer an equal in that relationship. You have harmed that relationship, and you have harmed that relationship without letting your spouse know that you were harming it. And by the time they find out about it, it's devastating to them. So guess what? They do not bear responsibility for fucking up the relationship. You do. And you are no longer equal to them. You are one down because you decided to go out and screw with your relationship without letting your partner know. So it doesn't matter that their teeth aren't straight and they fart and they've gained weight and they nag, because you are one down. You no longer have anything, any claim on anything, except I'm really, really sorry and I'm lucky if you let me stay until that big storm passes. And that can be up to a year. I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse. It was for men just like you, sir, to understand how much you don't understand about women. If you betray a woman, she's going to be hurting for a year, and she'll be angry and hurt for a year. And if you expect her to get over it in 3 months, because who is she to be angry at you for that long, then you're never going to have a healthy relationship. And I don't mean to be so assertive toward you. It's just that I am absolutely on the side of partners who've been lied to and betrayed and manipulated because they need someone on their side. And the person they love has not been on their side, and that is devastating for them. And by the way, sir, the fact that these partners that we get involved with are willing to even give us the time of day, no less stay with us after what we've done, is a miracle. And I give them credit for that too. Now, 2 years down the line, you've done your work, you've been sober, you've been honest, you did disclosure, everything's clean, your spouse, you're equals. You are just as guilty as them. If something bad, there's no angels in that relationship. But while you are one down, yes, sir, you are one down. And I will shine the shoes of that partner just because they're willing to still talk to you, because that's how much pain they're in because of your behavior. So you say you're not in a relationship. I have to say, someone who says, I'm an addict and thank God I don't have a spouse, and then goes on to kind of devalue the pain of people who are hurting, I think there's some issues for you to look at about intimacy in relationships, because I don't want to see anybody be lonely. And I have to tell you that our lives are only made fulfilling, enriched, and meaningful by having close, intimate other people in them. So you may be grateful you don't have that angry spouse today, but I guarantee you, when you're not feeling well and you're wanting someone to take care of you or someone to nourish you, or you're going to be looking around for that person you don't have. And by the way, when you want to celebrate things, you're going to be looking around for that person to celebrate with, because it is our human condition that we do best when we're in relationships with other people. Just how it goes.
So the next one I'm going to read is, it's been a month and a half since I found out about his multiple affairs and addiction. I tried to put up boundaries, but he didn't accept them and continues to act out, so we are separating. He has no support because of shame and sometimes makes me feel guilty. Is it too soon for me to make the decision to split?
No. You set a boundary. I'm not okay with this behavior, which means to me, if you said that to me, it would mean, okay, I got to get some therapy. I got to get some help. I got to go to a treatment center. I'm going to lose you if I don't do something about this. And he said, he's not accepting your boundaries and continues to do what he wants. So basically he shit on you. And now he's saying, and is it okay if I keep shitting on you? And you're saying, no, it's not. So absolutely, you have permission. You have all kinds of permission to take care of yourself and not let someone treat you or your soul or your heart badly, or let anybody take advantage of the good love that you have to give. And if this man has the good sense to show back up for you and apologize and own his behavior, maybe he'll have a chance at earning something back with you. And if he doesn't, you are better off moving on.
How is ADHD and porn addiction related? If porn addict with ADHD takes medication, would that eliminate the addiction?
I'm not going to answer that because I'm hungry and we're out of time. But I will say this, guys. Please join me on Friday. Sorry, Tammy. Please join me on Fridays. I'm on intherooms.com at 6 p.m. California time, and that's a different platform. It has nothing to do with us. I volunteer my time. I do a show called Sex, Love, and Addiction. Please know that the podcast, which is free, is also called Sex, Love, and Addiction. If you want to know about the treatment that Tammy and I and others provide, we're at seekingintegrity.com. Interestingly, those of you who are listening, all of our patients are here. Like every time we do treatment, our patients are here. Hopefully their spouses are here. We want everybody in this community to be listening and growing and hearing this stuff together. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Tammy, for your help.
Thank you for all the great insight and wisdom. Much appreciated. So, and as I told everybody at the beginning, I'm going to apologize and say, I'm sorry we didn't get. So come early next week and some early first get answered. So thanks,
Bye,
Dr.
folks.
Rob. Thank you all.
Bye for
Bye.
now.